The Forbidden Forest. The sky above Earth 12 was always dark. Thick clouds moved slowly, like monsters made of smoke. Strange plants glowed faint green under the weak light of the twin moons. It was a planet the Galactic Council had marked long ago, uninhabitable, untouchable, forbidden. But curiosity was a strong thing. Velari, a young alien scout from the planet Zilari, stood at the edge of the jungle with her small team of explorers. Her skin was a soft lavender and her large silver eyes blinked nervously behind her scanner. She was only here for a simple task: observe the planet's apex predator, the one known across galaxies as the Ravager. It had killed thousands before. Even warships stayed away from this creature. Fast, silent, deadly. Velari whispered. Any movement? Her second in command, Jaro, shook his head. No, it's been silent for hours. Maybe it left its den. Ravagers don't leave their nest for long, she said, scanning the deep jungle. Something's wrong. They had set up camp half a kilometer from the Ravager's last known nest. From above, the satellite feed showed heat signatures, but they were strange, not animal-like, too still, too warm. Let me go check, Velari said. Alone? Jaro raised his brow. You're not serious. I'll stay low. Just a quick look. If something's inside that nest, we need to know. Against Jaro's warning, Velari slipped into the trees. The jungle was alive with sound. Buzzing insects, dripping leaves, strange animal cries. She moved quietly, blending with the environment, her boots barely touching the forest floor. As she got closer, she saw it. The nest. It was a huge, bone-covered cave, like a beast had shaped it with claws and teeth. Ravager nests were known to be filled with death. Bones of animals, burnt plant life, even remains of past visitors. But what she saw inside shocked her. A fire. A small campfire burned in the middle of the nest. Around it were bones. Yes, but not fresh. Clean. Picked clean. Skulls stacked like trophies. And sitting beside the fire was a human. Velari's breath caught in her throat. The human was male, tall, rough-looking. He wore pieces of armor made from alien hide. A blade sat on his side made from Ravager claw. He didn't look afraid. He looked bored. She watched in frozen silence as the man picked up a large chunk of meat, Ravager meat, and held it over the fire. He turned it slowly, calmly, like he'd done it 100 times before. She blinked. Was this real? A human was cooking and eating the apex predator of the galaxy, and he looked completely relaxed. Velari slowly pulled out her hollow recorder and began recording. No one would believe this. No one. As she zoomed in, the human suddenly paused. He looked up. His eyes went straight to her location. Her heart stopped. Did he see me? She thought. The man smiled. Just a small grin. Then he returned to his cooking as if saying, I know you're there, but I'm not worried. Velari took a step back, heart pounding. She turned and rushed through the jungle, her mind spinning. Back at the camp, she stormed into the tent. There's a human in the nest, she shouted. Jaro looked at her like she'd gone mad. A human? Alone? Are you sure? He was cooking Ravager meat. I saw the bones. He looked at me, smiled. She showed them the hollow recording, the fire, the armor, the meat. They stared, in silence. Is this real? One whispered. No human can survive this planet, let alone hunt a Ravager. This is a death world. Velari nodded slowly, still pale. That's what I thought too. Outside, thunder rolled through the jungle. The night had begun, but something darker had already awakened inside Velari's mind. The galaxy had it wrong. The Ravager wasn't the most dangerous thing on this planet. The human was. The apex has fallen. The night was cold, but Velari's skin burned with fear. She sat on a log back at camp, her eyes still fixed on the hollow recording. Over and over again, she replayed the moment the human smiled at her through the trees. That calm, easy grin, like he didn't fear death at all. No one in the team could sleep. Jero finally broke the silence. What if the human didn't just find the Ravager dead? Valari looked up sharply. What do you mean? What if he killed it? Everyone turned to look at him. That's impossible, one of the techs whispered. Ravagers don't die. You can't even shoot them down. Their skin reflects plasma. They move faster than our drones. You'd need an army. And this man was cooking it like stew. Valari finished. No one laughed. Valari stood up. I'm going back. Jaro grabbed her arm. Are you crazy? I need to know how he did it. I need to speak to him. He saw me, Jaro. And he didn't run. That means he wants me to come back. She didn't wait for approval. This time, she moved faster through the forest. She didn't stop to scan. She didn't check the air. She just followed the faint glow of firelight. The nest was still there, still lit. The smell of roasted meat was stronger now, thick and smoky, mixed with something strange, like melted metal and blood. She crept closer, eyes wide, ready to run. But the human was already waiting. He sat cross-legged beside the fire, a large plate of cooked meat in his lap. He didn't reach for a weapon, didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Hungry?" Valari froze. "You've been watching for hours," the human added. "Might as well join me." Valari slowly stepped forward, hand on her energy pistol. She didn't sit. The human shrugged and bit into the meat. Juice ran down his chin. "Tastes like snake, a really angry snake." "You killed it?" Valari asked quietly. He didn't look at her. "What do you think?" "That's not possible. It's the apex predator of this planet." "Not anymore," he said, chewing. Valari felt like her brain was breaking. "Who are you?" "Name's Dax, exo-survivor, got left behind 3 Earth years ago." She stared. "You survived here, alone. For 3 years?" He pointed to a pile of sharp bones. "Company wasn't great." Valari finally stepped closer. She looked at the skulls piled near the fire. Not just one Ravager. Many. "How did you kill them?" she whispered. Dax wiped his hands with a piece of thick hide. "Same way you kill anything. Be smart. Be quiet. Be crueler than they are." He stood up and walked to the edge of the nest. Valari noticed scars on his back. Deep ones. Claw marks. "I learned something here," he said, looking out into the dark jungle. "The Ravagers aren't top of the food chain, not really. They're strong, fast, sure. But they're not smart, they don't adapt." He turned toward her, his eyes serious now. "But humans do. We adapt. We break rules. We survive. Even hell isn't enough to stop us." Valari stepped back, shaken. "But this changes everything." Dax nodded. "Yeah, and your people won't like it." He picked up a strange spear, made from Ravager bone, and slung it across his back. "Listen," he said, his voice lower now. "You saw one human, and now your belief in the galaxy's deadliest predator is shattered." Valari didn't answer. Dax looked her dead in the eyes. "Imagine what happens when the rest of us show up." Back at the alien base camp, Valari showed her full report to the team. No one could sleep that night because now the question wasn't, how did he do it? It was, what else can humans survive? And what can they destroy next? The humans warning Valari returned to the nest the next day, but this time it wasn't curiosity that pulled her. It was fear. She had seen many dangerous things in her training as a scout. Black hole beasts, acid blood worms, and even the fire, giants of Sector 7. But never in her life had something smiled at death the way Dax did. When she arrived, the fire was out. Bones were gone. The nest looked abandoned. Her scanner beeped. Motion. Behind her she spun fast, but it was already too late. A hand clamped over her mouth, a knife pressed softly against her neck. Not cutting. Just a warning. Why are you following me again? The voice whispered in her ear. It was Dax. Valari's heart thudded like a drum. He was faster than she thought. Quieter than the Ravagers. He released her and stepped back. No apology. Just calm eyes. You're lucky I didn't gut you, he said. Some of the locals aren't as friendly. I'm not here to fight, Valari said quickly. I came to ask you something. He crossed his arms. Talk. Valari hesitated. Then she pulled out her scanner, showing the radar. It showed large red dots moving, fast. Dozens of them. They're coming, she said. The Ravagers. We think they noticed the dead ones. We picked up new signatures moving toward this area. A whole pack. Dax didn't look surprised. He just sighed and rubbed his face. I figured. You expected this? He nodded. Yeah. See, Ravagers aren't smart, but they do remember pain. When you kill one, the others smell the blood. Then they come looking. For revenge? No, Dax said darkly. For feeding. They eat their dead. Valari's face twisted in disgust. That's horrible. That's survival. She looked at him, scanning his calm face, his steady hands. You're not afraid, are you? He looked at her and gave a tired smile. No. I've done this dance before, but it's harder when you're not alone. Valari frowned. You mean me? I mean you. And your team. They won't survive a Ravager hunt. They don't know the ground, don't know the tricks. He turned and started walking into the trees. Valari hurried after him. What should we do? She asked. Dax didn't stop walking. Run! That's it? Either run or learn to kill like a human. Back at the base, Valari tried to convince the others. They're coming, she shouted. A full pack, maybe more. But her captain only laughed. We'll be in orbit by then. She showed him the scans. They're faster than our shuttle engines on foot. They're going to surround us before liftoff. The captain waved it off. Then we hold position. We have energy weapons. Shields. Valari slammed her hands on the table. Shields don't stop teeth. You don't understand what we're dealing with. They're animals, Scout, the captain said coldly. Not gods. Valari backed away. Her hands shook. They were all going to die. Later that night, a quiet sound woke her. A soft knock on the outer hull of the camp tent. She pulled her weapon, heart racing, but it was Dax. He crouched at the edge of the shadows, face serious. They're already circling, he whispered. You've got 5 hours at best. Valari looked over her shoulder. They won't listen. They think this is just another wild beast. Dax didn't smile this time. Then let me show you what happens when they're wrong. 5 hours later, the screams started. Bright flashes lit up the jungle. Valari stood next to Dax on a small cliff, overlooking the base camp. Too loud, he said. Too many lights. They called the Ravagers like a dinner bell. From below, the sounds of metal tearing, weapons firing, and bones cracking echoed up through the trees. Valari's heart broke. I warned them, she whispered. Dax didn't look at the carnage. He just handed her a blade, made of bone, smooth and sharp. She took it. What now? She asked quietly. He looked at her for a long moment. Now you decide, he said. Do you want to watch this world eat your people, or do you want to fight like someone who belongs here? Valari closed her hand around the weapon. She didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. The swarm approaches. The jungle was quiet. Too quiet. Valari stood with Dax on the high ridge, looking down at the wreckage of her base camp. Smoke curled up into the air like fingers, and small fires flickered in the trees. No one was moving down there. Not anymore. All those voices, all that confidence from her officers, gone in a single night. Dax didn't say, I told you so. He didn't need to. Valari turned to him. How many Ravagers were there? Dax squinted into the distance. Not all of them. That was just the first wave. Her heart dropped. There's more? He nodded. The real swarm always comes after the first blood is spilled. These ones were scouts, hungry, reckless, but the alphas, and they wait, they track, they surround. Valari looked at her shaking hands. Why would they do that? Why not just kill? And leave? Because you're still here, Dax said. And now they know. You saw one of them die. That makes you a threat. Valari took a deep breath. Then we need to run. But Dax didn't move. He sat down calmly and pulled out a small metal map from his gear, a holographic layout of the surrounding valley. No, he said. We stay. We fight. Valari stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Fight? With what? You and me against a pack of apex monsters? Dax looked up slowly. No, not just us. He pressed a button. From the side of the ridge, hidden under camo cloaks and jungle vines, metal crates rose from the ground. Old human tech, weapons, traps, drones with broken wings and rebuilt plasma cores. Valari blinked. You've been planning this? Dax grinned. I've been surviving, but now that I've got backup, I'm ready to do more. She stepped forward, looking at the gear. Some of it was rusted. Other parts looked like they'd been patched together with bone and duct tape. It wasn't military. It was worse. It was human survival tech. Desperate, dirty, and deadly. The next few hours were a blur. Dax taught her how to lay heat trigger mines, how to bait the Ravagers using blood pheromones he'd collected from old kills. They set up spikes in the narrow valley, dug trenches with sharpened branches, and lined the cliffs with explosive cords. Valari had trained in the Galactic Fleet for 6 years. She'd never seen anything like this. There was no elegance, no order, just raw, brutal kill-or-be-killed instinct. Why a valley, she asked. Dax wiped sweat from his brow and pointed toward the ridge. They like to circle prey. We'll make them think we're weak and trapped. Are we? He smirked. Yeah, but they don't know we bite. That night, the wind changed. Dax stopped what he was doing and sniffed the air. They're coming. Valari turned to him. How do you know? He simply whispered. I can smell the blood on their breath. They took their positions. Valari high on the cliff, her plasma rifle locked in. Dax waited near the bait pile, crouched behind a burned log, and then the jungle opened. Dozens of red eyes blinked in the shadows. Huge bodies moved like smoke, silent, deadly. Ravagers. They were taller than she expected. Their claws shimmered with thick venom. Their spines dripped with something black and boiling. They didn't roar. They didn't charge. They watched, until the smallest one stepped forward. It sniffed the air, lowered its head, and took the bait. Boom! A fireball lit the night. One Ravager was thrown into a tree. The others shrieked and backed away, but it was too late. More mines exploded. Spikes shot from the ground. Drones buzzed and dropped charges. Dax leapt from the shadows and threw a spear made from their own kind, right through one's skull. Valari's rifle lit up. She fired again and again, aiming for the soft joints under their arms. It wasn't a fight. It was a trap, and the Ravagers had walked right into it. By dawn, the valley was quiet again. Valari limped down the hill. Her armor was cracked. Her gun was smoking. She smelled like smoke, blood, and dirt. But she was alive. She saw Dax sitting beside the fire again, calm, like nothing had happened. She dropped beside him. He offered her a drink. She took it without a word. Then she looked at the battlefield. 15 dead Ravagers, 1 human, 1 alien. She turned to him. You knew this would happen. Dax shrugged. I've lived with monsters. I know how they think. Valari looked at the blood on her hands. I don't think I'm part of the Galactic Fleet anymore. He gave her a small smile. Good, he said. That means you might survive. Bait and fire, the jungle still burned behind them, but Dax didn't rest. While Valari sat on a rock, wrapping her wounded leg, he was already back to work, pulling bone shards from dead ravagers, carving fresh traps, and whispering to himself like a soldier who had seen too many battles and trusted no quiet. Valari winced as she tightened the bandage. That was supposed to be the end, wasn't it? Dax didn't look up. That was the warning shot. She felt her stomach turn. You mean there's more? He nodded. The Alphas didn't come down last night. They watched, studied. That's how they lead. Valari's skin went cold. The Alpha Ravagers were the smartest, strongest, and most terrifying versions of their kind. It was said they only moved when their territory was truly threatened. And now? Now, Dax had turned their hunting ground into a graveyard. What do we do? She asked. Dax stood, holding a chunk of fresh Ravager meat in one hand and a canister of strange orange powder in the other. We bait them. They moved quickly. Dax knew the jungle like it was a living map. Every vine, every slope, every hidden pit was familiar to him. Valari followed, watching as he smeared the Ravager blood across rocks, trees, and roots. What is that powder? She asked. Ground pheromone dust, he replied. It drives them crazy, makes them smell prey where there is none, makes them angry. She looked at the traps being laid, at the fire trails waiting to ignite, at the pitfall lined with explosive fuel. You're not just baiting them, she said quietly. You're inviting them into hell. He didn't respond, because he didn't need to. The trap was set in a narrow gorge, surrounded by cliffs on three sides. Valari stood at the far end with a high-heat flamethrower slung across her chest, while Dax crouched near the center of the gorge, setting the final fuse. He explained the plan in simple words. We wait till they all enter. Then we light the gorge and close both exits with firewalls, no way out. Valari frowned. What if they don't come? Dax looked at the bloody meat hanging from the branches. Oh, they'll come. And they did, just as the twin moons rose into the sky. The first scream echoed through the trees, not a human scream, a Ravager call, low, long, angry. Valari stood her ground as dark shadows crept into the gorge. Not one, not 5. 30. At the front were the Alphas, larger, more armored, eyes glowing like dying suns. One of them sniffed the air and growled. Another stepped forward and tore into the bait meat, shaking its massive head side to side, flinging blood across the ground. But then, silence. The Alphas stopped. Something wasn't right. They sniffed again, paws tensed. They knew. Valari's hand hovered over the ignition trigger. Now? Dax didn't answer. He was already running straight at the swarm. Valari gasped. Dax! But he wasn't attacking. He was drawing them in, yelling, waving, throwing. Sent bombs at the cliffs to flood the gorge with confusion and rage. The Ravagers roared and gave chase, snapping at his heels as he led them deeper into the gorge. At the last second, he dove into a trench and rolled out of view. Valari saw the signal flare go up, red to blue. She hit the switch. The gorge became a storm of fire. Flames rose from hidden pipelines, trapping the Ravagers inside a wall of heat. Explosions roared up the cliffs, dropping burning rocks and debris into their path. Valari pulled the flamethrower trigger and swept fire across the middle path, cutting the swarm in two. Ravagers shrieked, claws scratching at stone, some trying to climb out, only to fall back into the flames. In the middle of it all, Dax emerged from the smoke like a ghost, covered in ash and soot. Dragging a wounded Ravager by the tail, he threw it down beside the others. That's the last of them, he muttered, coughing. Valari stood frozen. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. The firelight reflected in her eyes. It was over. The gorge was silent. Later they sat together watching the embers die. Dax handed her a ration bar. She took it without a word. Valari finally whispered, You didn't just survive this planet. You turned it into a weapon. Dax stared into the fire. No, I just gave the monsters what they gave me. Fear. She looked around at the smoking battlefield, bones still, glowing from the heat. What now? She asked. Dax didn't smile this time. They'll send more. Not Ravagers. Aliens. Governments. Scientists. Maybe soldiers. They'll want to know how a human did this, Valari whispered. What will you tell them? Dax finally looked at her. I'll tell them the truth. He stood and walked toward the jungle again, into the smoke. That this planet doesn't belong to monsters anymore. Galactic denial far above Earth 12, orbiting safely in a sleek command ship, the Galactic Council waited. Dozens of alien species sat in polished chairs, tentacled diplomats, crystal-skinned scholars, and golden-robed warlords. Their eyes stared at the giant screen before them, watching the final video Valari had transmitted from the surface. It showed fire, smoke, dead Ravagers, too many to count, and one lone human walking calmly through the battlefield, dragging a Idoc Ravager head like it was luggage. The room was silent. Then Counselor Jix, an elder from the insectoid Kazari, clicked his mandibles sharply. This is a trick. Another delegate, eyes glowing from the shadowy Varn Empire, hissed. No, living being can kill that many apex predators with jungle tools. The data is false. Valari stood before them, her uniform burned, armor cracked, and blood still dried on her sleeves. She didn't bow. She didn't even blink. It's real, she said flatly. And you're all afraid to admit it. Murmurs erupted across the chamber. Counselor Lemu, a water-breathing ambassador from the core worlds, leaned forward. You claim this human, this Dax, killed an entire Ravager swarm. Alone? Valari corrected him. I helped. More murmurs. But, she added, I only survived because he taught me how. A nervous silence fell again. Then Jix slammed his claw on the table. Impossible. Ravagers have slaughtered entire platoons. They destroyed 5 exploration ships. They burned half the planet of Terex. One human can't do what thousands failed to do. Valari reached into her satchel and tossed something onto the table. A Ravager fang. Longer than a sword, black as night, and etched with heat damage. I watched him carve that out with his bare hands, she said. No one touched it. No one spoke. Later, in a private room, Valari stood before the High Commander of Zilari forces, her own people. He was old, strict, and known to execute scouts for false reports. He stared at her through the hollow table, his tone cold. You disobeyed orders. You entered a restricted nest. You consorted with a primitive. Why? Valari didn't answer right away. She slowly opened her wristband and sent the final data packet, a full recording of the Ravager trap, the baiting strategy, and Dax's speech at the fire. She said only one sentence. Because everything we thought we knew was wrong. The commander studied the footage, his face unreadable. Then he leaned back in his chair. There will be an investigation. You may be stripped of rank. I don't care, Valari replied. He narrowed his eyes. Why? She stared straight at him. Because if the council keeps ignoring what so next time the Ravagers won't be the threat. Down below on Earth 12, Dax stood alone again. The battlefield had cooled. The ash was settling. He looked up at the sky, seeing a dozen tiny dots, ships watching from orbit, afraid to land. He laughed quietly to himself. They're too scared to talk, too proud to admit they sent scouts to die. A voice spoke from behind him. Valari had returned. You were right, she said softly. About what? They didn't believe me. Dax shrugged. Of course not. Power doesn't like being reminded it's not the strongest thing in the room. She stepped beside him. They'll try to silence it. Cover it up. Say you were a myth. Dax chuckled and turned to face her. Then we give them something real to fear. He walked past her and tapped on a small transmitter. It blinked blue. Valari frowned. What's that? Beacon. Hidden tech from the first human ship. Never used it until now. Who are you calling? Dax looked toward the stars. Home. 2 weeks later, the Council's Skywatchers noticed a strange new signal approaching Earth 12. It was human-made. It was large, and it wasn't answering hails. Inside the council chamber, alarms rang. Valari's voice echoed from the last transmission log. You think they avoid war because they're weak? They avoid it because they know they'll win. Return of the Human, the stars above Earth. 12 shimmered like broken glass, but one star was moving. It grew brighter each night, larger, not twinkling like the others, but glowing with cold, sharp light. Valari stood on a cliff, eyes fixed upward. Her skin prickled as the signal became clear. It's them, she whispered. The humans are coming. Dax didn't look surprised. He sat on a fallen log behind her, sharpening a blade carved from an alpha ravager's spine. They heard my message, he said simply. Took longer than I thought. Valari turned. What are they sending? He paused, then smiled faintly. Not a rescue. The ship entered low orbit without sound. It didn't broadcast greetings. It didn't ask for landing rights. It simply hovered above the planet like a silent judge. From orbit, its shape was strange. Part warship, part mobile. Base with scorch marks and claw scratches across its hull. It looked like something that had fought hell. And survived. Inside the Galactic Council's communication deck, alarms rang across every system. Human ship entering Earth-12's airspace. No crew ID. No broadcast codes. They are not responding to any hails. Counselor Jick slammed his claw on the table. Intercept it. But it was already too late. The human vessel deployed drop pods, one after another. Black capsules fell from the sky like metal comets, slamming into the jungle floor with thunderous force. Valari and Dax stood by as the pods opened. Men and women stepped out. Not shiny soldiers in polished armor, but hardened survivors. Their gear was scratched, blood-marked, pieced together from dead worlds. One woman wore a helmet made from an alien skull. Another carried a launcher welded from 3 species weapons. These weren't explorers, they were returning kings. Valari swallowed hard. You never told me who you were before you crashed here. Dax shrugged. Didn't matter, until now. A man approached them from the lead pod. His beard was gray, but his eyes were sharp. He looked at Dax and nodded. Heard you cleared the jungle, Dax chuckled. Had help. The man looked at Valari. An alien, but not an enemy. Just a witness to the truth. Back in space, council meetings turned to panic. They're landing without permission. They're claiming the surface, ignoring our treaties. They're building outposts. Valari's last report echoed through their feeds again. They aren't here to ask. They're here to stay. Counselor Lemieux slammed a fist on the table. We must send warships, show them they can't rewrite galactic law. But Jix whispered something that chilled the room. They've already rewritten it, with fire and bone. On Earth-12, the humans moved fast. They didn't wait for authorization. They cleared the last Ravager nests, burned out hives, laid comm beacons and motion sensors. One group built a tower on the highest cliff, a lookout post, watching both the skies and the shadows below. Valari helped them. She wasn't part of the poor galactic fleet anymore. She wasn't even sure who she was, but when she saw children step out of the final pod, laughing, running, carrying tools instead of weapons, she understood. This wasn't a base. It was a beginning. At dusk, Dax stood on the ridge, gazing out across the valley now filled with human tents, flickering lights, and the smell of real food. Valari joined him, arms crossed. They'll never forgive you, she said. The Council, the Empires, the ones who believed Ravagers ruled this world. Dax nodded. Let them be angry. What happens when they try to take this planet back? He turned toward her. Let them come. In the black void of space, a message was broadcast, short, clear, and undeniable. From Earth-12, the once death world, now renamed Outpost Genesis. First human colony on a forbidden world. The message was signed not by a general, but by a civilian, a survivor, a human.